what I scared the crap out of me. That's what attracted me to the team was the structure and making it work with our lifestyles. And I was shocked just to see the drastic increases in improvement in a short period of time, given that shift in my training focus. So I was very surprised by that, but it all makes sense once you get into it.
Yeah. Thanks, John. Uh, one thing that I put here is like the work rest thing, thinking about like work set and rest set, or like work interval, rest interval within a workout. It applies from like super micro level to super macro level. I've talked with lots of athletes about this, but it's really easy for people to like start to understand when they're executing interval training that like, okay, I'm gonna run really hard for this 800 meters, and then I'm going to rest for like 400 meters before I start the next work interval. But when it comes to people like really diving into like Ironman training, for example, feeling really like worried and scared, and they want to make sure that they're doing enough, it's hard to think about taking rest and recovery days depending on the level, like your level and experience. A rest day might be a complete day off within a week, or it might be active recovery, like an easy spin, really easy run. But the importance like of that recovery day is that you are allowing your body to recover and adapt so that you're able to hit the next hard session well. And sometimes people like shy away from recovery days, especially when they're feeling like extremely motivated, just like have a lot of momentum. They don't want to take a day off. And whether that be like day completely off or even active recovery day, but this work rest like principle applies at the week level. It applies at like the micro mesocycle level when we're thinking about like 3 weeks up, 1 week down. We're really like building progressive overload over the course of a 2 week block or a three week block. And then it's really important to like take the rest that your body needs and requires in order to adapt to that training stimulus that was introduced over the course of the previous weeks. Um, and sometimes, like when people have been training really hard, they are really grateful to get that recovery, that adaptation week. But I've also, in my experience, like had lots of people that are like, "Oh, I'm still feeling really good," especially at the beginning of a training block. I'm still feeling really good. Like, can we just push through this recovery week and we'll like put it off for another couple of weeks? And while that's like possible and sustainable, depending on the athlete's experience level for a period of time, it's not sustainable for the long term. And you can very quickly end up overtrained, injured, and like that's just going to set you back even further than like taking that time that your body really needs to adapt to the training stimulus. So, like, yeah, thinking about it from that like mesocycle, like a couple of weeks up, 1 week down kind of thing. And then even on the macro cycle level, looking across an entire annual training plan, athletes, depending on when you're racing in the season, there's a lot of people who will like train really hard for an early season 70.3 and then also target a 70.3 in the later season, maybe target an Ironman race in the later season. And if you just like shut it down or like recover for a week following your first race and then jump right back into another block, without giving your body just like a little bit of time to reset, that like it can impact your ability to sustain for the entirety of the annual training plan. And that's especially helpful at the end of the season, like giving yourself some like a little bit less structure, a little bit of opportunity to just reestablish consistency and habits following the season. All of those are very important, just like from really macro level, like looking from a 30,000 foot view at what you're interested in achieving over the course of a season or multiple seasons. This like work rest thing applies at all levels. Um, just talking about a couple of like primary principles when we talk about progression, when we talk about volume, we're not always talking about duration. That's the like it's the primary thing that people will say is like how many hours are you training a week when it comes to volume. But I really like to emphasize that like volume is a matter or it's like starts as a function of frequency. How frequently are you training? Are you like working? Are you like training 3 times a week, 4 times a week, 5 times a week? More than that, then we're increasing the duration after like first manipulating frequency as a variable, then manipulating duration of workouts, and then manipulating the intensity of those workouts. And once you've like kind of stacked all of those on top of each other, then there is like different periods of time when we might be stressing duration over higher intensity, and then there might be other periods within a macro cycle when we're emphasizing intensity over like volume or over duration as a function of volume. So yeah, just talking about like all three of those things are different variables that are playing into like the amount of volume that like this training stress really is like accounting for. I'm gonna pause for a second. Anything that any coaches on the call want to add or yeah, anyone else?
I think just one other thing is the flip side of that is sometimes you're not going to feel great for every workout, but sometimes it is okay to push through during certain
Yep,
periods as well. I think sometimes we forget about that, but you need to follow that with rest and when in doubt, err on the side of recovery.
for sure. Thanks, Conrad.
I think another important point too, especially for newer athletes, is we all want to be performing at the best level we can, and in the sport it takes time to get there. And if you're used to training on your own, a couple 4 or 5 hours a week, and then you all of a sudden jump into 10 to 12 hour weeks, that's a huge jump when you're doubling load. So really prioritizing that to reduce injury, like you mentioned, because it's easy just to get excited and feel like you're on top of the world and you can train forever, and that only is going to last as long as your body will allow it. So steadily building the progression of duration, like you were mentioning, just taking your time with that and not trying to rush something that's going to be better in the long run if you build it well rather than rushing it. It's kind of like building a house. Cheaply built
Yeah,
houses aren't great, but well built ones last really long. So
yeah, definitely. Um, Great. These last 2 points, just like talking about the different metrics, and there are even more than this now. I was talking to somebody about like their core temperature sensor that they can now see, but like some of the three primary metrics I like to talk about when it comes to like guiding like how hard or how easy you should be going on a given day are heart rate, pace, and or power, and then rating of perceived exertion. I find that there are people who fall into different camps, but there I have multiple examples of athletes that like kind of start to disregard RPE as a metric. They're not considering it quite as significantly as I feel like they should. And I've asked questions of people like, so how'd that run feel today? And they're like, oh, well, like I hit those 800s in 3 minutes and 30 seconds. And I'm like, okay, great. And how'd it feel? And they were like, well, it's 7 minute pace. Like, yeah, yeah, yeah. But like, how did it feel? Right. And just making sure that you're like not disregarding what a workout feels like and that you're like allowing your like yourself to triangulate between like, okay, this is the pace that I'm going. I'm running like 10-minute pace. My heart rate's 150. Those feel aligned with each other, but this feels way harder than it should. And it's okay for me to dial back for that reason. Or the opposite is the case. If coach prescribed like 3 minute 800s and like heart rate's really low and like my rating of perceived exertion is really low and I want to push it a little bit, then that might be a good opportunity to like to run a little quicker as well if you're feeling like you can. So just like being able to triangulate those, because when it comes to racing, like being able to triangulate between all of those different metrics can really help ensure that you're like pacing the race well and that you're like setting yourself up for getting all the way to the finish line feeling really strong. And then this last point, just like tools versus distractions, we've got more and more like software technology that is like getting into the forefront and that people are paying a lot of attention to. It's just like really important to make sure that you're like talking with your coach and just like considering like maybe just one of these tools and not all of them because there is a lot of noise that can be difficult to tune out. If you're the kind of person who gets on Zwift and like can't help but like hit the sprint, even when you're maybe like doing a workout that doesn't necessarily include a max like 20 second effort, like being able to just like kind of tune that out, or if you've got people that are like commenting on your Strava average pace, like I always think that the like biggest flex is like being able to just like go out for a recovery zone 1, zone 2 run and just like really not care about how fast you're going. And I feel like sometimes it's pretty surprising. I have had athletes tell me that they've had friends of theirs that are surprised at how fast their race actually is when they just like run 10:30 pace all the time, but then they run a like 24-minute 5K and they're like, how'd you do that? You're always running 10:30 pace. And like it's because there's a lot of intentionality behind how that person is training at different points. Um, we've got oh wait, I want to make sure I'm sharing my sound so that you guys can hear this beautiful voice that's about to grace us.
Another point on that last one, Derek, with Strava. I know when I first started into this world, like I was on Strava, my screen time was probably, I don't even want to talk about it. It was way too much. And honestly, it's one of those things. It's like a social media thing where you can get so caught up in that, and it's really like you waste more time looking at Strava than you do training sometimes. And it's if you're in that world or if you're caught up in that, I'd encourage you to shift away from it because everybody's on their own journey and everybody's at different levels in their experience and their training. Some people are peaking for races, some people are in recovery time. So it's one thing if you use it to kind of keep up with people and see how people are doing in racing and stuff. But I just caution everyone to not let it get as controlling over you as it did for me because I was on there quite a bit. But it's a good tool, like you said, but it can easily become a distraction. So, and don't listen to your Garmin, by the way. Me and my Garmin have a hate relationship. So, listen to your coach. Don't listen to your Garmin.
Um, yeah, I can say from a personal perspective, I've found Strava to be most helpful for building routes. And if you want a pro tip for not chasing like KOMs, move somewhere close to Boulder or like yeah, Bend, Oregon, and like there's never a chance to get a KOM, and so then you just like you stop paying attention to all that stuff. All right, let's hear from our favorite Mr. Tom Lakin.
My name's Tom Lakin. I've been with Working Triathlete for 3 years now, and I would say that my biggest surprise as a new triathlete is how important recovery and listening to your body is in the long run. Just recently, I've had this realization that, it doesn't hurt to miss a workout if, your body is absolutely exhausted from a long weekend, or if you need to take an easy day, or if you need to sleep in and catch up. It's going to play a bigger role in the long run than squeezing in a workout.
So yeah, Tom's kind of making that like making a bit of a point that we were talking about earlier, and I'd also like to pair that with the fact that Tom is racing Ironman Wisconsin in a few weeks, and we were just texting earlier this weekend about like these next couple of weeks, and he was just like, yeah, I'm feeling really fatigued. Like I'm just tired overall. And like to a point that Conrad made, like we discussed all of it and it's like there's a real reason why you're fatigued right now. You're like in the throes of like a big build into a big race, and it's expected that you're fatigued. And as long as you feel comfortable like getting through this entire week, then the taper is going to start, and that's when we're really going to allow you to shed that fatigue. So it really is a balance. And Tom and I have been working together for years now, and we've really like just come to develop a close working relationship that allows for him to just like hit me up and say, hey, I'm going to take tomorrow off because I really feel like I need it. And then also he reached out last week. He's like, I'm just going to push through this week. Is that the right move? And the answer is yes, because we're intending for him to feel fatigued right now, in like this last big week before before tapering into Ironman Wisconsin. All right, I want to open things up for questions. Is there anyone that is willing to share how it felt when they shifted from random hard sessions to structured training, or something that changed for you once you made that adjustment?
I mean, I'll jump in here.
Yeah, go ahead, Alan.
Yeah, I've been in for 3 years, give or take now, and I was running and doing a bunch of stuff. I had self trained the first year, and it was a structured periodized approach, but it was not as it. And I kept feeling the temptation to push hard all the time, and it wasn't until I actually started, and my dread was seeing the zone 2 runs hit the workout, because I was trying to watch it via heart rate, and my heart rate would always just skip out of the zone so fast in the early days. And it got to the point where I was just so frustrated. But then as time went on, the heart rate started to come down, and everything else started to, like, the base paces of everything improved. And it made it a lot easier to actually see what was happening, because even though I wasn't feeling it in the short term, it was a long tail change versus a short term change. And seeing the overall, like, progression over the last several years of training, you definitely see the difference in one hard workout doesn't do shit for you, to be perfectly honest. Like, it just makes you feel better in that moment. You've got to build it over time, and especially as you're in the run up. I'm in a run up to a 70.3, and I know damn well that nothing that I do in the next 3 weeks is really going to change my base level of fitness. It's more about just making sure that I feel confident at the moment, and making sure that I can actually do the race. So it's keeping everything in mind and just trusting that, yep, do the sessions that I can do, make sure that I can do them to the best of my ability, and then don't stress about it.
Cool. Thanks, Alan. How just out of curiosity, like how long do you feel like it took to like fully buy into like going as easy as you needed to go in zone 2 to like start to just feel and see those benefits?
Probably about 6 months. The one of the things that it took me the longest, and I know everyone it takes the longest, is sorting out the nutrition and sorting out kind of like where the baseline changed, because I did a ton of training but then didn't change the eating habits a ton, or actually changed them the wrong way and was over indexing on a fat macro. And when I made the switch, it clicked.
Yeah.
And then everything kind of started balancing. It was like, oh, okay, this feels better now. Like, everything started to feel better.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Yeah, I mean, I think that like paints a clear picture that it's so much more than just like each individual workout, that there's this big comprehensive picture that you're painting, and everything that you're doing is playing a role in like how that training is being executed and the impact that it's having on you physiologically. Great. So this next slide, we're gonna just like talk about how to execute each of these 3 sports well. John, do you want to start?
Yeah, we've got not just one thing to work out. We've got 3, technically 4 if you talk nutrition. But as far as the actual sports and swim, bike, run, and even strength, you could throw in there. But at the end of the day, I think the beginning thing to really focus on is just focusing on that. We said there's skill and fit. Like you're building your engine. you're creating what you are as an athlete. Buying speed, it's a thing, but at the end of the day, you want to build your endurance. You want to build your fitness. You want to build your body as best you can, and then all those other things fall into place. We talk about the gear. We have a lot of gear in triathlon, but honestly, you can start triathlon pretty simply. You obviously want some goggles when we're talking about the swim, because you're going to spend some time in the pool. But at the end of the day, it's really all you would need. Efficiency is huge. We talk about efficiency over yardage, as far as, you can have the wrong form, you can have the wrong training approach, and swimming tons and tons of yards is going to get you somewhere, but it's definitely not going to get you there as fast. It's not going to improve your speed as well. How comfortable you are in the water. So that's huge. And that's something that I'm still, that's an ongoing thing. We can constantly develop efficiency in the water. Lots of micro adjustments you can affix to your stroke. Even just yesterday, Conrad and I were doing some work with things that just super small things, but they make such a big difference when it clicks. So if you aren't working with someone who is helping you with your swimming skills, your form, recommend doing that highly. Even if it's just a fellow athlete, somebody who's got experience in the swimming world, see if they can help you. It doesn't hurt to ask. Lots of resources out there. Obviously, coaches will love to help you out with things like that. It's just better than grinding out thousands and thousands of yards and feeling like you're getting nowhere. And then open water. Open water it's a whole different animal, and we all know that race feeling of getting out there for the first time in open water and just kind of freaking out, having a little bit of a panic moment or a big panic moment. So anytime you can get in the open water, it's huge. I know if you're local to Nashville, we have some pretty decent places around. Something you can always find close to where you live. Those skills are huge. Sighting, feeling the water, stroke rate, learning when you can surge and when you need to relax. I think being able to sight well and swimming in open water is huge. Just getting comfortable, swimming in a wetsuit or a swim skin, swimming in a wetsuit is a whole different experience than just swimming in a pool. So taking time to practice those things beforehand. Don't let your first race in a wetsuit be the first time you wear that wetsuit. You're going to have a tough day. It's a completely different feel. Things are restricted where they're not normally restricted, and it's just a different animal in itself. And the swimming with other people is huge. Group swims in open water are massive. Great times to develop that ability of just getting used to what it's like to swim with groups of people in open water. You're going to bump into each other. You're going to smack each other's feet. You're going to, swim in front of somebody because somebody doesn't know how to sight or you don't know how to sight well. It's just going to happen, but that's all part of the experience. It's just getting out there and doing it if you're able to. And it pays off big time on race day for sure. And when it comes to bike stuff too, we've got so much that we can do on a bike. There's different frames, different setups, different styles. At the end of the day, you want to be comfortable on your bike, and that comfort will translate to speed. Right size frame is the great starting point. The right type of bike is a great starting point. If your race has got 3,000 feet of climbing over, 30 miles, you don't want to ride a triathlon bike. You probably want a road bike for that race, just for comfort. Or if it's a pancake flat course and you have the ability to ride a triathlon bike, do it. It's comfort equals speed on that kind of stuff. And then gearing and handling. This is just a plug too for our camp coming up. We're going to have a couple really awesome clinics on gearing and handling by some of our pros who race at an extremely high level. And where this kind of stuff matters a lot, it's really helpful to learn these things to where, you can get into the weeds of one buys and different cassette sizes and different tooth front chain rings, all that stuff. But being able to do all those things well will just help. It's all stuff that's just going to help you out. Handling the bike too. Handling the bike well comes with time in the saddle. If you don't ride but once or twice a week, it's going to be hard to get good at it. But the more often you can ride, the better for sure. Anything you want to add on those two, Derek? The swimming and biking? I mean, those are big topics, but
Yeah. There's so much that we could talk about, and I've actually got some links to previous webinars and like podcasts that we've shared, like that I can put in the chat at the end. But there's a ton that we could cover here. One thing that I just like want to briefly touch on from the bike perspective, and just like thinking about gearing and handling, plugging that bike camp that's going on in Franklin as well, is like I granted there's always like small power meter like discrepancies, but like I have seen so many different examples of let's say an athlete that's doing 200 watts for a 70.3 bike, and they go and one person does 200 watts and rides 250, like a 2 hour 50-minute bike split, and then somebody who rides 200 watts and does something like 238. We're talking 12 minutes difference. And like, yeah, maybe there's a small, like, just like calibration difference across power meters. But like in reality, a lot of times it is a position and an aerodynamics thing. But even talking about the same athlete doing the same power and like sitting in a similar position, riding a course really efficiently plays a huge role. And if you're not like just shifting effectively, cornering well, taking the apex of the corner so that you have to slow down as little as possible and get out of the aero position for as short of a period of time as possible, descending effectively down any hills, like then you're not getting the most out of the power that you're pushing, and you can just like get stronger, push more power, like maybe get a little bit more aerodynamic, and you're still not going to optimize how quickly you can move across a bike course. So I'm a big proponent of learning how to ride your bike well. There's also examples I can think of people who like are solo warriors sitting on their trainer in the garage at 3 o'clock in the morning every day or every bike session, and then they get off the trainer for the first time the week of the race. And sometimes those people are not only riding a course inefficiently, but they're riding it kind of dangerously because they haven't spent a lot of time riding their bike outside. And so to the extent that it's possible for you, just like being able to get outside and seeing how how the power actually translates to speed and how effectively you can get across the course. An exercise that I like to play around with is like, I'm not going to push power any harder, and I'm not going to change my position, but I want to see how much faster I can get across this section of road than I did the last time. And like it's kind of surprising how just like differently riding a course can help you move a little bit more quickly. So yeah, just like really plugging that there are different ways to ride a course, and you can move a lot more quickly than you might realize for the same power, and not even paying for a bike fit, which I'm a huge proponent for paying for. But yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, no, super helpful. Good points there with the racing, especially. And yeah, hitting this last one here with the run, obviously you just need some shoes. But one thing about running is, I think a big part is kind of like what we talked about earlier with the zone 2 slow runs. Your durability trumps pace. I mean, being able to put miles on your legs consistently and building that progression smartly or well, intelligently,
Man.
it will increase tremendously. And when that increases, your pace just naturally follows. So your pace will increase. It will get better when you stay within those zones to keep yourself developing well. And then running off the bike regularly is a huge skill that not a lot of people do enough. Don't think you can really do that too much, honestly, unless you're doing it every single time you ride a bike, which doesn't necessarily need to happen. But doing it regularly, once or twice a week, it just makes such a massive difference when it comes race day, and you don't experience that jelly leg phenomenon when you come off of a hard bike ride and you're getting ready to run. So all those things help. And it kind of goes back to we triangulate heart rate, pace, and RPE, the adrenaline of a race situation throws some of that stuff completely out the window. So it's really important to practice that feeling, even with a little bit of adrenaline at the end of a good ride, to practice that regulation of not going out, at a 7-minute pace off the bike if your race pace is 8 flat. You don't want to throw off the rest of your run and ruin the rest of your race. So practicing those things in training is huge, to get familiar with that phenomenon that'll happen, and to get used to that, and not let that ruin a really good race potentially in the run portion. So it's a tough thing to execute all three, but it's definitely worth it to do it in the training, and to do these things that'll help you train smarter for sure.
Yeah. Just like, yeah, an additional point related to what you're talking about, like not running too fast. I know that a lot of people talk about like brick runs to like, just to get neuromuscular familiarity, making sure that like your legs aren't, or you're just familiar with your legs feeling like jelly. But like, especially like, with new athletes that I coach, if we're like really focusing on fueling well and pacing a ride really well, people go for like a 3 hour ride and then they get off the bike and they're so surprised at how good they feel. And like, if you don't help them realize that, like, yes, you feel really good, and yes, it feels good to run 7 flat, but we know that your race pace is going to be a little slower than that. And so, yeah, just like really getting familiar with like getting off the bike, feeling really good, and dialing back that adrenaline that John was talking about. It's so important, because yeah, just like overrunning the first 2 miles, of a run off the bike in the race is, like just something that I see so many people do in their like first race of multiple distances. Um, and then, like the other piece, just talking about durability, like in especially in long distance triathlon, we're really like, the people who perform the best are the people who slow down the least, not the people who speed up during the run. It's about how durable and like how resilient you are, to like putting lots of miles on your legs. And it's why we do over distance running, not necessarily over distance. Like if you're doing an Ironman, you're never going to run over 26 miles, but you will run like significantly more than 26 miles over the course of a week. And I like to talk about that as like the cumulative volume. Like if you're going to be running 26 miles in a race, you're probably running 35 to 40 miles plus per week. And so then when your legs get to around that 20-mile mark, um, like in your cumulative week, like with your taper, you've still got plenty of miles left in your legs. And so that's, like one of the reasons why we're like just really emphasizing durability is it allows you to make it to the finish line without slowing down as much as everyone else. And hitting a target pace coming off the bike and not going too fast off the bike is another way to make sure that you don't slow down too much. All right. Yeah, like just continuing with this like gear and fit priorities, like, just the fit of a bike is way more important than, like the components of that bike, right? There are diminishing returns when it comes to what componentry you're getting on a bike. If you're the kind of person who has the expendable income to spend $10,000 on a bike, and it will be the thing that gets you out to like ride and gets you on the bike to train, then by all means, I am a like huge proponent of spending the money that you want to spend on the things that you want to spend it on, and also a really good fitting bike that is used that costs $2,000 is going to perform just as well as, like most of those super bikes. But making sure that you've got the right size bike and making sure that you go and get fit by a professional and talk to that person about how you want to be comfortable enough to stay in the position for the entire duration that you're planning on riding for, but also that you want to prioritize being in a really aggressive and aerodynamic position as well. I um I've worked with athletes that their like priority was feeling comfortable and feeling confident on their bike and not going really fast. And you can talk to a bike fitter about that. And sometimes there are bike fitters that will default to that, especially if you're new to cycling. And I've seen like plenty of people, I'm sure like many of you have as well, that when you're sitting up like in the bars like on your triathlon bike, and then you get down in the arrow position and there's like almost no shift in like upper body position, but you feel really comfortable, you feel really confident on your bike, that's great. But if you like are really trying to prioritize moving as quickly across the course as possible, you want to talk to your bike fitter about comfort, but also about like being aerodynamic. Um, and then like yeah, start with the gear that matters the most. Like getting a saddle that feels really comfortable, shoes that feel comfortable, like yeah, wetsuit tri kit that fits you well, and moves through the air, moves through the water really well. And then there's like all kinds of different schools of thought when it comes to the hierarchy of aero and efficiency upgrades and like what is going to get you the best bang for your buck. But they're like, I know that Conrad and Derek did a podcast on this a long time ago. I've got a link to. We've also like talked pretty extensively about fit in past webinars that we'll make sure to link before we leave today. But um, I would like argue that like position, bottle placement, helmet, shoes on the bike specifically are all kind of like the highest value when it comes to like dollar for CDA kind of thing. Buying a really expensive set of wheels um, is like might be really shiny, and it also isn't necessarily going to get you going as fast as getting a really nice aerodynamic helmet, for example. Um, and yeah, anything else that like Conrad, I know that you have like spent a lot of time like focusing on like aerodynamics and efficiency upgrades. But yeah, opening the floor to anybody.
Yeah, I mean, I just maybe it's worth quantifying some of the gains, and I use Best Bike Split a lot, and we'll run analysis, and uh, the number one factor that influences speed, and it's pretty tremendous, is CDA, so drag, and of that, it's all about position. And when athletes go to the wind tunnel or we test, however, it with in the wind tunnel or with a Ghibli or something, uh, the big one massive realization is head position. And any factor that they're testing, whether it's like hand extension angle or what shoes they want to use or even the helmet, they realize that all of those pale into comparison to just keeping your head low. Like when they're testing in the wind tunnel, a lot of the runs are useless because they go like this and look up. So you have to really focus on fit above everything, but everything else does matter. And to quantify the difference, if we're running an analysis on especially a flat course, like Ironman Florida, for example, I ran a few of those. Reducing your CDA by 10% can save like 12 minutes. But
Mhm.
whereas reducing your weight by 10% saves 18 seconds. And I know, with Caroline, we did an analysis at Penn State, 70.3 Happy Valley, and it was like she was worried about the weight of her bike, for example, and like a 5 pound difference, it made like about that, like a 20-second difference over 3,000 feet. So the point is efficiency matters and the position of your body matters a lot. That doesn't mean we shouldn't ignore everything, but in the hierarchy, helmet is the no-brainer, uh, and disc wheel is the last thing you should be worrying about.
Yeah, thanks. And yeah, you're like talking about like just such a small difference for weight on the Happy Valley course versus the Florida course. It's like really talking about like one of the hillier 70.3 courses that exists out there, and it's still just like not as significant of a factor as just like your position and CDA rolling across that course. Cool. Um, Thanks. All right. We're gonna move on to just like handling the whole picture. We've talked like quite a bit about some of this stuff, or like yeah, have hinted at it a little bit. But when folks sign up for their first race or hire a coach for the first time, I like they come with so much excitement and motivation and momentum, and all they want to do is just like dive in head first. And I've found that a lot of times it's about making sure that this person is like building training for triathlon or training for endurance sport into their lifestyle sustainably. Otherwise, there's a finite period of time that they can train at this really just like not train at a high level, but just train with a huge amount of volume and it not fitting sustainably into their life before things will kind of start to crash out. So just like making sure that you're paying attention to fueling and nutrition. I've like found like Becca did a really great webinar on relative energy deficiency in sport a few months ago, but just like making sure that you're fueling your body for the amount of training load that you're doing. If you're increasing the amount like the volume of your training across any of those like different like modalities that we were talking about earlier, like either frequency or duration or intensity. If you're increasing volume, you need to make sure that you're fueling your body well. Otherwise, it's a bit of a ticking time bomb before you end up feeling overtrained, potentially dealing with injury, all of those things. Making sure that you're just like balancing training with all of the rest of the things that are a part of your life. I know that for me personally, I like my in my family we just had like our second kid, and I found that the way that I fit in training now is completely different than the way that I fitted in previously. And I know that that's generally the case for a lot of new parents or just parents in general, but figuring out how to make it feel or make sure that training is complementing your life and not subtracting from it is what's going to allow you to do this for the long term. I've found that the people who are the absolute busiest tend to be the most honest with me as a coach about how much time they have to train. Or like people who have tried and failed and like tried to fit in a little bit too much training and it didn't work for them are the ones that are able to say like, hey, I've got an hour on Tuesday and Thursday and 50 minutes on Monday and Wednesday to train. And they're able to execute those sessions really consistently because they know how it fits into their life. Versus the people who are a little bit overly ambitious, they're like, yeah, I've got time to train anywhere from 12 to 15 hours. That's about what I've been doing. If I don't really go in and audit and they're not able to sync past workouts into training peaks, and I'm not able to look in and see that like they really have been consistently training 12 to 15 hours for the last 6 months or so, then a lot of times they're a little overly ambitious about what about telling me as a coach what they're capable of doing and what they've been doing most recently. So just making sure that you're really being honest with yourself, set aside like a practice that I know some folks have found useful is like putting out like a ideal week calendar and like where are you fitting in training and like maybe just subtracting like I don't know a third of that training volume to know and account for some of the life stress and like things that aren't necessarily going to show up on that ideal calendar can be really helpful. Um, Really thinking about like the amount of sleep, the amount of stress that you're under that isn't training stress will help from a long-term consistency perspective as well. There are plenty of folks that I've coached, that I've talked with, that sacrifice sleep. They wake up extra early to get in that workout, and while that might work like a couple of times here and there, it doesn't work sustainably. If you're like, okay, I'm gonna keep going to bed at 10 o'clock, but I'm just gonna wake up an hour and a half earlier to get my like bike session in, and somebody does that over and over and over again for like a couple of weeks or a couple of months at a time, it's those people that end up like dealing with injury, because they're just not, their body is not able to recover from. And that like injury, maybe like worst case scenario, best case scenario, they're just not adapting to the training. And there's this difference. There's a difference between like recovering from and actually like experiencing the physiological adaptation to training. And if you're just training with your nose to the ground and not giving your body the opportunity to really recover from and then adapt to that training stimulus, then you're not going to be getting what you can out of the training that you're doing. So yeah, just making sure that you're really prioritizing like fueling, balancing training with the rest of your life, sleep, recovery, and then like working with your coach and with the other people that are important to you in your life to build your confidence, especially when setbacks come about, whether that's injury, like whether that's a race result that wasn't quite what you were expecting or hoping for. So yeah. Um, Evan, this is where I'm going to give you a chance to come off mute and share. Um, you want to like talk through a little bit of like, I'd love to hear like both the like when you've found like, okay, I don't have this much time to train because I'm super freaking busy and this is how much time I have and like what's resulted from that. And then also like if you want to just talk through the injury that you experienced earlier this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so I think what Derek said about building your schedule and like really like working with the time that you have. I'm super busy to kind of say it bluntly, but I work a full-time job. I'm a patent agent. So I'm working kind of 8:30 to 5 pretty much every day of the week, if not longer, plus weekends and stuff. And then I go to law school at night. So 6 p.m. until about 10, Monday through Thursday, I'm in class. So I really only have the very beginning of the day every day to train. So that was something Derek and I have been kind of working with and experimenting with. And I'm definitely like on a much lower volume than I was pre-law school and then just like figuring out kind of how to fit that in. So we have anywhere from 45 minutes to like an hour 15 of training I could do during the weekdays. And then on the weekends, I can try and get in a long ride on Saturday, long run on Sunday, but that's the schedule we've been working with. So I think it's important for me to be training just because it's like I find it kind of therapeutic. It's something that I need to do to like stay like mentally happy, healthy, and physically healthy as well. So I kind of know how to make time for that and know how to like fit it into my schedule. But Derek's been great also working around when the stressful times are for work or school and kind of when I need to adjust that. And yeah, earlier this year, I had a weird injury. I don't remember exactly what the formal title was, but I ended up getting tendonitis in my foot during the build into a half marathon in March. So this was I think it was like January 2nd that this happened. And we were 2 or 3 weeks into the build and it's during like an extended tempo run. And I just like my foot really started hurting on the second rep. And I was like, all right, I got to stop and just kind of hobbled back to my apartment, could barely walk, but kind of got it together, went to work and took my sock off at one point during the day and saw like a golf ball sized lump on the top of my foot and was like, oh, that's not good. So I, texted Derek. I was like, I think it's over. Like half marathon's not happening. Might not run again. My life is destroyed. He talked me off a ledge and was like, it's probably not that bad. Go to PT, figure out what's going on. And I found a PT like 5 minutes from my office, was in there that same day, got it looked at, got imaging done, decided it wasn't stress fracture or anything super serious. And it was just some sort of tendonitis that popped up really suddenly. I was in a brace for about a month and kind of really slowly got back to running with about 4 weeks before the race. And we had 2-3 solid long runs and was able to build into the race. And like I had a 6-minute PR still in the half marathon. So I was super happy with that. And yeah, I think overall it was just a really tough experience, but a good one with like a lot of like important reminders for me. Is just like, I think the consistency year over year of just kind of like stacking those, 8 to 10 hour weeks as opposed to, a couple blocks of 15, 20-hour weeks was really important because I really don't take a whole lot of time off because I'm just at that lower volume. and just learning how to like adapt to changing circumstances and adjusting like your goals and perspectives. Like we definitely dialed back the goal time, the goal pacing and everything for the half marathon, but it was just kind of good to be able to, you know, work with it and learn how to work PT into the schedule, figuring out what workouts I could and couldn't do, and learning how, you know, fitness can still persist. Just, you know, mentally you need to get past the point that like, yeah, you might not have been running as much as you wanted to, but that doesn't mean you're not fit. That doesn't mean you won't be able to perform if you have, you know, a safe, comfortable build into it. So like we didn't go back too quick or anything. We did everything kind of the right way, working with my physical therapist. And it just, I know it was luckily kind of not the worst case scenario, but it was a really, I think, good experience to have and learn from.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Evan. And like for context, like Evan went from like basically 130 flat half marathon PR to a 124 half marathon PR, and run volume was super low. We weren't really doing much intensity in the build into that half marathon, and he still was able to like execute it really well, just because like we were approaching it as a team, like Evan working with his PT, like we were just talking really consistently and making sure that it felt like we were incorporating it well. And then just commenting on the like we went from doing a lot of volume. You were like Evan was doing 12 to 14 hours pretty consistently, and then he started going to law school, and we're like, okay, let's be honest, we're gonna cut this down to like 8 to 10 hours a week. And like counterintuitively, like his FTP went up. He like went from running like 650 pace for a half marathon to running like mid sixes kind of thing. And all of that, like I think it's as a result like of really ensuring that he's prioritizing recovery. You know, it's like it's going back to what I was saying earlier, where like we were really giving his body the ability to adapt when previously, like maybe with life stress and everything else, it might have just been like a little bit too much load for him to handle even before law school. And then we cut way back and Evan got faster. So yeah. And kudos to him to like just like leaning into that and being confident enough to like reach out and talk to me and be like, hey, I really think I need to dial back, and I don't think that it's a bad thing. Um, so yeah. Well, I know that we're at 11 o'clock. I've got a little bit more to chat through, but just want to like thank everybody for coming if anybody does have to jump. Um, but I want to like just quickly like talk through something that many of you have probably already like thought through why to hire a coach. And yeah, I'm sure that most of you are already working with a coach, but if you're not, like what John shared earlier, you can figure it out on your own, but it might take longer. You might not get quite as fast, and it'll be messier and just more work for you. Um, and like, I really want to hone in on this last point. Like, getting the most out of coaching is really about like communication and coachability. And what like that story that Evan was just talking through is like really what has like stood out to me most is like the athletes that I work with that I see get the fastest a lot of times are the ones that I'm speaking with most consistently, that we're like working on things together as a team. Not necessarily like if it's a new athlete, it's not somebody coming to me saying like, "Hey, I think I need to do like 8x800 instead of 6x800 on Thursday." It's more like, "Hey, like I'm just really noticing that I'm feel like this fatigue is building, and like we haven't really been incorporating any rest days. I think that like I really just need a break. Can we take Sundays off so that I can like hang with my family and like just kind of reset before the week starts again?" And it's those athletes that are able to like proactively communicate and that I'm talking with really consistently, that I find to be the most coachable and that they're like able to experience the most progress. So yeah, big plug to like not just follow your training plan, but also like talk to your coach consistently. Some of that is on the coach. Like your coach should reach out to you and check in on how you're doing. And like as someone who coaches athletes, like I want to hear from athletes consistently too. I want to get a text every once in a while, like proactively on their end. That's like, hey, I just want to let you know that like this last block felt really good. I'm feeling really confident. Or hey, that workout yesterday like just didn't really feel quite right. And so I had to shut it down. And just like reaching out proactively is something that I really do count on as a coach. And that I think helps athletes progress the most. All right. I got a couple of other quotes that I'm not going to share because it feels like I was fishing for compliments and I wasn't, but so we'll just kind of like move on and share some closing thoughts. John, you want to chat through these points?
Yeah, I think you should still show the quotes. They're pretty good. You're a good coach. Um, yeah, no, closing thoughts, guys. I think the biggest thing we can take away from today is training with intentionality, focusing on a race, focusing on a race. Getting something on your calendar that gives you that motivation to get up every day and to do those workouts, knowing that when you tick those workouts off, check those boxes off, you're gonna be well prepared for that day to execute. Being intentional about that. Another thing along with that is get with group stuff. If you can train with groups around you, whether it's working triathlete group workouts or other group workouts, people are people. And when you can train with people, it elevates everybody's performance and it enhances the whole experience. So if you're able to try to fit that into your schedule, those are the highlights of my week is training with our groups here. And just I love that piece of the community. And just stay focused on the structure, consistency, um, trust the process. We hear that cliche quote all the time, but it's the truth. I mean, you trust the process, results will come, and trust your coaches. They know what they're doing. There's a lot of experience, a lot of years of training and racing on this squad, and just a lot of good advice you can get if you ask. Part of that communication is asking and communicating with that. Um, and finally, you don't have to be a pro to train like one. I think the difference with a lot of professionals is their consistency and their tenacity of doing all of the work, getting the work done that they need to perform at the levels they do. And they take everything very seriously from a recovery, nutrition, performance standpoint. So that's a lot of the difference of what makes pros. But you don't have to be a professional to be like that. You can just be a disciplined person that wants the best for themselves and wants to be the best version of themselves for you and for your family and your friends and whatever goals you have. So I hope there was a lot of good takeaways for you guys here. We would love to hear any additional thoughts, Slack workspace in the working triathlete, WhatsApp, any of those things you need. Feel free to reach out, and yeah, we'd love to continue the conversation if anybody has any further questions after this.
Yeah. And I'll share the slide deck on Slack. I guess I can't like copy and paste my notes for whatever reason, but I have all the links to these like embedded here, and then I can also share the links. But there's a ton of additional content, educational content that the entire Working Triathlete team has spent a lot of time on putting together other webinars, podcasts that are all relevant to everything that we're talking about. So just like plugging to always join these webinars whenever you've got the time, when you see them pop up on your Training Peaks calendar. And yeah, and listen to the Working Triathlete podcast when new episodes come out, because there's just like a ton of expertise that's coming from this team. But yeah, just I'll put this quote from Michael Murray up as everyone leaves, so that Matilda can see it because she wants to see the quotes. But all right, yeah, thanks a lot everybody for joining, and yeah, look forward to seeing you in the next one.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
All right. Bye, Mitch. Bye, Tom. Nice job, dude. That was
Yeah, I think it went pretty well.